The sky above Lagos had just begun to bruise with evening when the cars started arriving. First a black Rolls, then a convoy of armored SUVs, and finally, an old silver Mercedes that looked too tired to be here. But that's how grief moves. It arrives in different shapes, on different wheels. Inside the Williams mansion, the air was still and heavy, like something sacred had just been broken. In the center of the living room, now dressed like a royal chapel, stood a silver casket on a raised black catwalk. White roses surrounded it like soldiers in mourning. The chandeliers shimmered, and the floor gleamed, but all eyes were on what lay still inside, Amanda Williams. Or rather, what everyone believed was Amanda Williams, billionaire, heiress of Williams' Ameshaw conglomerate, and one of the most powerful women in African business. She looked serene, wrapped in flawless white lace, matching head tie, her face calm and unbothered, like a queen who had chosen how and when to leave the world. But Amanda hadn't chosen death. She had chosen the greatest performance of her life. By her side stood two women, Juliet and Olivia, her closest friends since university. Their tears were real. Their grief was not rehearsed. Even they didn't know Amanda was alive beneath the makeup and cotton wool. Behind them stood George, a quiet man with a soft Bible and a sharp intuition. He wasn't just Jonathan's best friend. He was a pastor, and he had seen things, signs, visions, glimpses. And something about today's grief smelled wrong. The staff, maids, guards, drivers, even the old cook, lined the back of the room with bowed heads. Nobody noticed that the door had opened. Nobody moved until the man they all feared stepped in. Jonathan Uke, dressed in a long black capon, eyes bloodshot, lips trembling just enough to fool the untrained. He looked at Amanda's body for a long time. Then he started to cry, but even his tears felt ambitious. George stepped forward and placed a hand on his friend's shoulder. "God will comfort you," he whispered. Jonathan nodded. Then something shifted. He turned away slightly, lifted his phone, and placed it to his ear. His voice was low, but the room had fallen into silence. Everyone heard him. "Hello, my love," he whispered. "She's finally gone." The words crashed into the room like thunder. Juliet stiffened. Olivia gasped. George's eyes widened. Even the cook dropped his spoon. Jonathan continued, still whispering. "By tomorrow, I'll be head of the company. We'll change the name. Then we fly to the Maldives for our wedding. Congratulations to us." He ended the call. Silence. Dense, electric. Olivia stepped forward, voice shaking. "Jonathan, how wicked can you be? Her body is still here." George frowned. "If someone told me this, I would never have believed it." Juliet wiped her tears and looked him dead in the eye. "If your plan is to take her father's legacy, we will fight you with everything." Jonathan opened his mouth to speak, but he never got the chance. Because Amanda Williams was not done. 10 years earlier, the perfect illusion. Back then, Jonathan Uke was nothing more than a smart bank manager with sharp suits and smooth talk. Amanda Williams was already a billionaire at 25, inheritor of Williams Ameshaw, leader of an empire, and daughter to a legacy that could crush nations. They married in a small church in Ikoyi, white flowers, golden hymns, smiling guests. Everyone said it. What a blessed couple. Then came Nardia. Their daughter lit the house like morning. She clapped for everything. The blender, the microwave, the dog. She laughed like wind chimes. But joy, like glass, can shatter. One evening, a fever rose fast. By midnight, the hospital lights blinked red. Hands moved. Machines beeped. Prayers stormed heaven. But silence fell. Nardia was gone, and the light in Amanda's eyes dimmed. They buried her on a Tuesday. Amanda returned to work the next day. Jonathan didn't. Hospitals followed. Test after test. They waited for another child. The wait turned into years. Years turned into walls. Amanda gave more. She gave Jonathan a limitless credit card. 3 SUVs. Private vacations. Freedom. "You've done enough," she once told him, handing over company access. "Now rest. Be close." She made him account officer for the Williams Group. It looked like a gift, but it was a crack in the fortress. Now he could see the rivers of money. Now he could map the flow. And something inside him began to darken. One night, he turned to her in bed. "Amanda," he said softly, "what is mine is yours. What is yours should also be mine. Let's add my name to the company. Let's call it the Williams and Jonathan Group." Amanda sat up, cleaned her face. looked at him. Are you joking? I'm serious. No, she said calmly. I love you. But my father's legacy is not for sale. If all I've given you is not enough, we can end this peacefully. He laughed. Ah, I was just playing. See your face. But he wasn't playing. The mistress and the map. Soon, there was Sandra. A beautiful lie with long legs and sharper claws. Jonathan bought her a mansion on Banana Island, in her name. He called it an investment. He started sleeping out. Sometimes, 2 nights at a stretch. Amanda's instincts screamed. She hired someone quiet. A private investigator. He followed the cars, watched the bank records, traced the transfers. And he returned with fire. A $5 million withdrawal from the company's charity account. Cars sold in secret. Hidden shell companies. And a mansion registered to Sandra Uche. But the worst came last. Amanda heard whispers. Whispers that Jonathan was planning to take her life. That he had made calls. Set a date. Chosen a day. The day. Amanda called her doctor, Dr. Nelson. She handed him everything. Documents, dates, fear. And they formed a plan. Mad, risky, impossible. Fake death. They chose the day Jonathan had planned. Amanda dressed like royalty. Bathed. Perfumed. Lay on the bed. Called Nelson. He ran in. Shouted. Checked her pulse. Shook the maid. She's gone, he whispered. The house collapsed into tears. Staff wept. The cook screamed. The driver held his knees. Nelson called Jonathan. She's gone, he said, voice trembling. Sandra's kitchen, where Jonathan stood, went quiet. Jonathan laughed. Let me see her. Maybe this is one of her games. The room was a theater of shock. Amanda's fingers moved first, a faint twitch that looked like a trick of the light. Then her eyes fluttered open. Just slightly. Just enough for Juliet to scream. The silver casket, under the golden chandeliers, had become a stage for the impossible. Juliet stumbled backward. Olivia dropped her handbag. George's Bible slipped from his grasp. Cynthia, the maid, screamed. Yezu. And then Amanda sat up. The cotton wool slid from her nostrils. Her breath came sharp, deep, alive. Jonathan froze, his back pressed against a marble pillar. The phone slipped from his fingers and shattered on the floor. Amanda stepped out of the coffin like someone walking out of her own grave. Her white lace gown shimmered under the lights. Her heels clicked on the marble. She wasn't just alive. She was resurrected with fury. Jonathan's lips parted, but no sound came. He raised a trembling hand and pointed. You were dead. Nelson said you were gone. Dr. Nelson rose from the corner quietly. His face calm, his voice steady. Amanda was never dead. We staged it. To see the truth. Cynthia gasped. Olivia blinked like she'd been slapped. Juliet's face went white, then red. Amanda walked slowly until she stood directly in front of Jonathan. They were inches apart. Then, smack. Her palm struck his cheek with a sound that echoed around the hall. That, she said, voice clipped, is for betraying me after everything I gave you. He staggered. Amanda raised her voice. I gave you trust, Jonathan. I gave you power. I gave you my life. And you handed it to a mistress and a bullet. Jonathan's face contorted. You tricked me, he hissed. This was all a setup. Amanda didn't blink. No, this was a test. And you failed. Juliet stepped forward. You celebrated her death, at her coffin. George's voice trembled. You plotted to erase her. Now God has exposed you. Jonathan's anger returned. You think this humiliation will stop me? You don't know me. No, Amanda replied coldly. We know you now. And that's the problem. She turned to Cynthia. Call the police. Minutes later, sirens pierced the quiet of the estate. 2 black police vans pulled into the compound. Officers in uniform marched into the hall. Inspector Aday stepped forward. Mrs. Williams? Amanda pointed. That's the man. Jonathan Uke. Fraud. Conspiracy. Attempted murder. Jonathan laughed bitterly. You think the police scare me? I'll be out by tomorrow. I am Jonathan Uke. The officers didn't wait. They cuffed him and dragged him toward the door. He resisted, shouting, Amanda, you will regret this. Sandra will save me. This isn't over. The doors slammed behind him. Fallout. Amanda's shoulders sank. Juliet wrapped her in a hug. Olivia took her hand. You're the strongest woman I know, Juliet whispered. We thought we lost you. George stepped forward. This battle is not over, Amanda. He will fight you still. Amanda nodded slowly. Then let him come. But this time, I fight back, with truth. Prison walls. Ikoyi prison was a concrete box filled with shadows. When the iron doors closed behind Jonathan Yuke, something else closed too. His life as he knew it. Guards dragged him through narrow corridors. Inmates stared at him like he was meat. So this is the famous banker, one muttered. Billionaire thief. Another spat near his shoe. Now you go chop beans with us. Inside his cell, 6 other inmates watched as he entered. The leader, a bulky man with tribal marks, stood up. They call me Bullet, he said. You want peace? You pay. Jonathan straightened his spine. Do you know who I am? Bullet burst out laughing. Everybody here was somebody outside. In here, you're nothing. He pushed Jonathan onto the torn mattress. Respect yourself, banker. That night, Jonathan didn't sleep. He thought of Amanda's eyes as she rose from the casket. He thought of Sandra. She had promised loyalty. If anything happens, I'll fight for you. He clung to that. War begins again. Back at the Williams Group Tower, Amanda sat with her team. Juliet handed her thick folders. 3 years of accounts. Dozens of shady withdrawals. Shell companies. All tied to him. Amanda closed her eyes. How did I not see it? Olivia spoke gently. He used love as a mask. George entered, face grim. Amanda, Jonathan's lawyers have filed for bail. Amanda stood abruptly. Bail? After everything? They're claiming there's no physical evidence of attempted murder. Just a misunderstanding. Amanda's jaw tightened. If I have to take the stand myself, I will. This story will be told in the open. Sandra's game. Far across the city, Sandra lounged in her penthouse. Red wine in one hand. Phone in the other. Yes, barrister, she said coolly. Get Jonathan out. Money is not the issue. He's the father of my unborn child. But it was a lie. She wasn't pregnant. She just needed leverage. Control. Once Jonathan was out, she would own him. If he stayed in, she'd milk his name and sell the mansion. Either way, Amanda would lose. 2 weeks after Jonathan Yuke was dragged from the marble halls of the Williams estate, the court of public opinion had already passed its verdict. But the real battle had only just begun. Outside the Lagos High Court, crowds gathered like witnesses at a public execution. Vendors sold newspapers with headlines that screamed, "The widow who rose, billionaire's betrayal, wife, CEO, survivor." Inside, the atmosphere was dense, part anticipation, part spectacle. Amanda Williams arrived with the calm of a general before battle. Navy blue suit, no jewelry, no tears. Her face unreadable. Her steps, silent declarations. Jonathan arrived in chains, thinner than before, but still clinging to arrogance like an old habit. The moment his eyes found hers, he smiled. You're glowing, he said through gritted teeth. But don't worry. This is just theater. I'll be free soon. And when I return, Amanda didn't flinch. She didn't answer. Silence, she had learned, was sometimes more powerful than rage. The court bell rang. All rise. The judge entered, a tall man with silver hair, sharp glasses, and a reputation for cutting through lies like glass through silk. His gaze swept the room once, then landed on the dock. Let the proceedings begin. The prosecution strike. The state prosecutor rose, buttoned his suit jacket, and began. Your lordship, this case is not simply about theft. It is about betrayal. A betrayal that started in a bedroom, snuck into a boardroom, and nearly ended in a morgue. He paced slowly. This is not a story of business gone wrong. It is a blueprint of premeditated erasure, of a woman's name, her legacy, and her life. He turned to the jury box. Over the next few days, we will present evidence. Documents. Witnesses. Motives. We will prove that Mr. Jonathan Yuke not only stole funds, but plotted to replace his wife's empire with his mistress's fantasy. We will prove that the man sitting in that dock wanted power badly enough to fake grief and real enough to risk murder. And the evidence began. Exhibit A, a timeline of unauthorized bank withdrawals from the Williams Group Foundation, neatly disguised, but eventually traced to Sandra Uche's mansion purchase. Exhibit B, private surveillance showing Jonathan entering and leaving the Banana Island property, including dates matching company account movements. Exhibit C, the testimony of Dr. Nelson. He took the stand with steady hands. Amanda came to me in fear, he said. She believed her husband had hired someone to end her life. I saw the signs. I saw the files. I believed her. We staged her death to expose the truth. Gasps. Are you saying The judge asked. You falsified a death? I reported what I had to, on medical grounds. But she never stopped breathing. Not for a second. Next came Cynthia, the housemaid. He stopped being a husband, she said, her voice breaking. He stopped saying good morning. He started locking doors. I once saw him burn documents in the garden. The prosecution was methodical. Cold. Clean. Then came the private investigator. We followed the trail, he said. 5 billion naira. Routed through 6 shell accounts. Transferred to properties, cars, cash withdrawals. All of it happened under Jonathan's access. All of it signed by him. He handed over signed documents, IP logs, timestamp transfers. The defense. Jonathan's lawyer was younger. Slick. Smooth voice and slow rhythm. He stood with the confidence of a man paid too well to doubt himself. My lord, he said, this entire case is not about crime. It is about a domestic quarrel that went public. It is about a grieving widow with a flair for drama, turning personal wounds into national theater. He turned to Amanda. She faked her own death. She weaponized trust. She humiliated her husband. And now, she wants to bury him. He called Amanda calculating, called the staged funeral emotional blackmail. He accused her of orchestrating the narrative to frame Jonathan, using public sympathy to shield her own corporate errors. She feared divorce would divide the empire, he said. So she chose scandal instead. He sat down. Jonathan takes the stand. I loved Amanda, he said. She was my wife, my partner. I never planned to hurt her. All this was a misunderstanding. Business got messy. I made decisions, maybe bad ones, but never deadly ones. His voice cracked at the right moments. He looked at the judge, then the jury, then the audience. She was my life, he whispered. Amanda watched, expressionless. Amanda's turn. The judge looked at her. Mrs. Williams, do you wish to testify? She rose. Silence followed her as she walked to the witness box. I gave Jonathan access to everything, she began. My life, my name, my father's legacy. I trusted him, and he repaid me with lies. She paused. He transferred billions behind my back, lied to my board, bought a mansion for his mistress. But what broke me, she said, voice tightening, was hearing him whisper into his phone, at my coffin, congratulations to us. The courtroom stopped breathing. I didn't stage my death to hurt him. I staged it to see him, to know what I was dealing with. And what I saw, she said slowly, was a man celebrating my death, planning his new throne. She looked at Jonathan. For a long time. I'm not here to destroy him. I'm here because I believe the truth deserves light. Final blow. The judge rose. This court has heard both sides. It has seen the evidence. It will deliver judgment in 7 days. Gavel down. Outside the court, Amanda stepped into the sunlight. Reporters swarmed. Cameras flashed. Mrs. Williams, someone shouted. What do you want from this trial? She stopped. Her answer was quiet. Clear. Justice. Nothing more. But elsewhere, in his prison cell, Jonathan sat with a stolen phone in his hand. Give me one more favor, he whispered to someone on the line. She can't make it to Judgment Day. Do this, and you'll never lack again. The voice on the other end replied, Consider it done. Far away, Sandra sat in her penthouse, watching the trial on TV. She dialed another number. Hello? Amanda Williams's office? I have information, but I want something in return. She smiled. Let the war pay both sides. The judge's words had barely faded. Final judgment in 7 days. But Amanda heard more than delay. She heard a window, a final round, a silent warning. She knew Jonathan. 7 days was more than enough for a man like him to rewrite fate. Day 1. The threat. The envelope was plain, unmarked, slid under her office door before dawn. Inside, a single typed line. You won't speak. Juliet found it and handed it to Amanda with trembling fingers. Amanda read it once. No expression. Give it to Inspector Ade. Lock the gates. Full surveillance mode. Every floor. Every room. Motion sensors, drones, thermal scanners, guard dogs, everything. Juliet asked, Do you think he'll really try something before the judgment? Amanda didn't answer. She didn't have to. Day 2. The Serpent. At 9:47 p.m. The intercom buzzed. Madam, said the guard. Sandra Uche is at the gate. Amanda was in the library. She didn't look up. Let her in. 10 minutes later, Sandra walked into the mansion dressed in black. heels clicking on marble like a warning. Amanda sat still, her eyes hard. Sandra didn't flinch. I came to warn you. Amanda smirked faintly. You? Warning me? Jonathan bribed someone. There's a plan. You won't make it to court. Amanda folded her arms. And you're telling me because? Because if you die, I get nothing. Amanda narrowed her eyes. Sandra shrugged. But if you live, I might get a seat at the table. Amanda leaned forward. You've switched sides. Sandra's voice was cool. No, I've always been on mine. Day 3. Lockdown. Amanda shut the world out. All meetings moved online. Every delivery was inspected. Security doubled. The children were flown to a secure house under state guard. Juliet and Olivia stayed with Amanda around the clock. Even George, quiet and grieving, started carrying a licensed revolver. Amanda didn't rest. Every second was a chess move. Because she knew, he was watching. Day 4. The signal. A guard found the flash drive at the gate, taped under a stone. Inside, photos. One of Amanda outside her office. Another of her entering court. The last, grainy, showed a man in a hoodie, holding a pistol beside a black SUV. No caption. No signature. Just a threat. Amanda stared at the screen for a moment. Then turned to Juliet. If I don't wake up tomorrow, call the inspector. Then call the media. Juliet whispered, Don't talk like that. Amanda replied, We prepare for what we know. Day 5. The attempt. 7:46 p.m. A gunshot cracked across the east wall. Guards stormed the perimeter. They caught a man scaling the fence with rope, gloves, and a suppressed weapon. He had a photo of Amanda in his sock. Her face was crossed out with red ink. He said nothing, just smiled. Inspector Aday arrived within minutes. Amanda looked him in the eye. Send the photos to the judge. Day 6. Waiting. Amanda didn't leave her study. She reviewed every second of footage from the last week. Olivia stayed near her. Juliet sat with a taser beside her wine glass. George read Psalm 91 out loud. His voice cracked halfway through. Amanda didn't pray, but she listened. They were all ready. As ready as anyone could be. She whispered to herself, Let the coward come. I'll meet him standing. Day 7. Judgment. The courthouse was under lockdown. Drones. Dogs. Barricades. SWAT vans. Amanda arrived in a black armored SUV. Hair tied back. Suit dark. No jewelry. Sandra was already there, waiting outside the court steps like a shadow without loyalty. Jonathan arrived in cuffs. He'd lost weight, but not his smirk. You're glowing, he told Amanda as they passed. You always look good before something bad happens. Amanda didn't reply. She never did when the weak tried to sound powerful. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with whispers. Amanda sat at the plaintiff's table. George beside her. Juliet behind. Olivia watching every movement in the room. Jonathan sat in the dock, cuffed, but calm. His lawyer whispered to him. He smiled, nodded, and looked at Amanda like a man who still believed in miracles. The judge, old, sharp-eyed, tired. He removed his glasses. This court has heard both sides, he said. We have reviewed the testimonies, financial records, surveillance data, and psychological profiles. He looked directly at Jonathan. Mr. Uke, your betrayal was not only of a woman who loved you, but of a legacy entrusted to you. You used love as cover. You plotted death while smiling in photographs. Jonathan blinked. This court finds you guilty. Gasps rippled through the room. You are hereby sentenced to 7 years in prison with hard labor. Effective immediately. The gavel slammed like thunder. Aftermath. Jonathan stood, pale, silent. But as guards pulled him from the dock, he turned once more. I'll write to you, he said to Amanda. She looked him in the eye and replied for the first time. I won't read it. He was dragged out screaming. Sandra watched it all in silence, her eyes unreadable. Juliet exhaled. Olivia reached for Amanda's hand. George whispered, Thank God. Amanda stood, gathered her coat, and said one sentence. It's not over yet. Because she knew, for men like Jonathan, defeat was never enough. They always came back for the ashes. It began not with a phone call, but with a knock. 3 sharp raps at Amanda's office door, precise, timed, like a metronome ticking toward judgment. Juliet opened it and stepped aside. In walked Inspector Aday, flanked by 2 plainclothes officers. Amanda stood. Her son's drawings were pinned behind her. 2 sons, 1 house, a woman with a crown. Good morning, she said, though the sky outside was dark. Ma'am, Ade began, holding a folder. We have new intelligence. It concerns Mr. Uke. Amanda didn't flinch. He's trying to communicate from inside. Bribed another inmate. It appears he's still networking. Juliet let out a curse. Olivia muttered, the devil doesn't rest. Ade placed the folder on Amanda's table. It contained a single page. A handwritten note from Jonathan, intercepted in the prison yard. Time does not bury kings. It only sharpens their knives. The throne is not hers. Not yet. Amanda read it, then closed the file. I want him watched. Every visitor. Every movement. Ade nodded. Already in motion. But you need to prepare. Because men like him, they don't go quietly. Elsewhere, Sandra Uche wasn't sipping wine anymore. 3 years after her courtroom victory, the Banana Island mansion had turned into a financial noose. Maintenance, taxes, debts, all unpaid. One by one, luxury faded. First the drivers, then the chef, then the electricity. She sat on the balcony, wearing silk that smelled faintly of sweat, dialing lawyers who no longer picked up. Her last friend in the media had ghosted her. Her social pages were silent. And worst of all, the money was gone. She looked around the empty hall and laughed bitterly. This was supposed to be my palace, she muttered. A knock came. Loud. Repeated. She opened the door to find a court bailiff. Eviction order, Miss Uche. The bank now owns this property. Sandra blinked. For a second, she thought about screaming. But instead, she smiled faintly and said, Do you have a spare box? Ikoyi Prison. Month 82. Jonathan counted every day. Not on a wall, too cliché. He counted them in his head, like debt. Each one owed to Amanda. He had written over 60 letters. None answered. But he wrote anyway. To her, to himself, to the version of him that might have been. Bullet, the former cell boss, now sat in a wheelchair after a brawl. Jonathan had become the quiet one, the helpful one, the one the younger inmates listened to. Not out of fear, out of mystery. Some nights, they asked him, Were you really a billionaire? And he would nod, softly. And a fool. Amanda. 5 years post-trial. Williams Group had never been stronger. New tech ventures. Eco-construction projects. Scholarships in her father's name. But Amanda herself had changed. She had grown leaner, sharper, like a blade that had been honed too long. Sam, ever steady, had become her calm, a man who spoke little but listened deeply. One evening, watching their boys play, Sam asked gently, Would you ever meet him? Amanda didn't blink. No, he doesn't deserve peace. But later, alone in her study, she read one of the letters, the last one. Amanda, I know you'll never read this. Maybe that's for the best. But I think of you when it rains. And when the power goes out. And when I see a child smile. I hope you never see a cell. I hope you never taste regret. I hope your boys never have to unlearn love. I was a monster. You were my light. I'm sorry. Jay? She folded the letter, placed it back in the drawer, and locked it. Not out of fear. Out of memory. Year 7. Jonathan's release. It rained the day he stepped out. No crowd. No speech. Just damp clothes and a folder of papers. He walked to the gate, expecting no one. But Amanda was there. Sam beside her. Their sons in the car. Jonathan stopped in place, as if shot. Amanda held his gaze. You look older, she said. He tried to speak. Couldn't. I read the last letter, she continued. Not for you. For myself. He lowered his head. I have a proposition, she said. A small job. At the Surrelier branch. Not power. Not trust. Just work. If you want it. He looked up, tears blending with rain. You would after everything? Amanda replied. Forgiveness without opportunity is incomplete. But redemption, you'll have to earn that yourself. He nodded, unable to speak. Sam simply said, Let's get you dry. Sandra. 2 months later. The Banana Island mansion had been sold to a real estate tycoon. Sandra now lived in a rented room above a bakery in Balagan. One day, she wandered the market barefoot, asking for water. Someone recognized her, took a photo, posted it with the caption, From Banana Island to Banana Peel. It went viral. Amanda saw the image on her phone. She said nothing, just whispered, Greed eats itself. Juliet asked, Do you feel sorry for her? Amanda paused. No, but I understand her now. She thought love was something you conquer.